I go by Emily Carter, and I had just turned 18 years old the day my mother decided to abandon me at a rest area along the highway as some kind of twisted life lesson. What made it truly terrifying was her calmness. There was no screaming, no shouting, nothing that would have prepared me for what came next. She simply gestured toward a nearby bench with a firm finger and stated in a flat voice, "Sit, think, learn." I actually chuckled at first because I was convinced this had to be some kind of empty threat. Our family dynamic had never really involved actual punishments or real consequences. Instead, we operated on a currency of uncomfortable silence, heavy guilt trips, and the performance of perfect smiles whenever outsiders were watching, while I received nothing but coldness behind closed doors. But then something shifted. She actually climbed back into the vehicle. I witnessed the car door slam shut with finality. I watched as the red brake lights flickered off into darkness. I could physically feel the engines rumble as the car pulled forward, almost like she had been practicing this exact moment. There I stood, clutching my backpack tightly, my pride still intact, and a cell phone that was already on its last breath of battery life. I kept reassuring myself internally that she'd loop back around in just a moment or two, that this whole thing was simply a scare tactic designed to make me compliant, that surely no actual mother would really follow through with something like this. 4 minutes ticked by slowly, then 9, then a full 18 minutes. She never returned to get me. The instant my phone screen went completely black, something inside my mind clicked into a different mode. If her goal was to watch me spiral into panic, I refused to give her that satisfaction. If she was expecting me to come crawling back, filled with gratitude and apologies, I would forge my own path instead. So I made the decision to start walking, all 7 miles of it, moving steadily along the dangerous shoulder of the highway, counting each step deliberately so my mind wouldn't spiral into counting my mounting fear instead. Vehicles roared past me close enough that I could feel the wind shake my hair violently. I forced myself to keep my gaze locked straight ahead, my jaw clenched tight, because I knew that if I allowed myself to cry even once, the tears would never stop flowing. After that day, I heard absolutely nothing from them, not a single word for years upon years. I had to mature rapidly, constructing a life that nobody could ever strip away from me, convincing myself repeatedly that the past was buried forever. That is, until yesterday arrived, when a baby shower invitation appeared in my mailbox with their names clearly visible on the return address label. I ripped the invitation cleanly in half. That's when I realized the real education was only just beginning. The argument that day had erupted the way our disagreements always seem to ignite, starting with something seemingly trivial that was never truly trivial at all. We found ourselves crammed together on a family road trip, packed into the car like we were all performing some act of pretending to enjoy each other's company. My mother, Helen, had her fingers locked in a death grip around the steering wheel, and her voice was locked onto me like a laser. "Stop slouching," she commanded sharply. "You look ungrateful." I kept my attention fixed on the passing scenery outside the window. I was completely exhausted from being constantly corrected, like I was some kind of error that could be pressed flat with enough pressure. I was tired of watching her shower my siblings with praise for simply existing, while she scrutinized every single breath I took like it was somehow incorrect. My response came out flat. "I am not slouching. I am sitting." She shot me a glance that made it feel like I had just insulted her in front of a crowd. "You always have to push back. Why cannot you just be pleasant for once?" That particular word, pleasant, was her weapon of choice. In her vocabulary, it translated to silent. It meant completely obedient. It meant rendering myself invisible. I could feel something hot and angry crawling up my throat. "Maybe I push back because you keep pushing first." I said it before I could stop myself. The temperature inside the car seemed to drop several degrees, even though the air conditioning system had been broken for weeks. My younger brother kept his eyes glued to his handheld gaming console, furiously tapping buttons like he could somehow drown out our voices. My little sister hummed a tune to herself, still too young to fully comprehend that our family only appeared cheerful and functional when there was an audience present to witness it. Helen suddenly veered the vehicle into a rest stop parking lot like she was parking the entire argument along with the car. "Everyone out!" she ordered with authority. Once outside, she made no effort whatsoever to lower her voice. She never did when she believed she was in the right. "Look at you," she said with contempt. "You cannot even pretend to be happy. You embarrass me." I laughed again, but this time it came out sharp and bitter. "You embarrass yourself." Her facial expression hardened instantly. She looked past me toward the vending machines and the various families walking in and out, like she was deliberately making sure there were witnesses present for whatever came next. Then she did something I genuinely did not expect in that moment. "Why do not we leave her here?" She snapped it out. Not directed at me specifically, but into the air, like I was merely a problem she had grown weary of carrying around. "Maybe a little space will teach you what it means to be part of this family." My response came quickly. "Fine, leave me." I meant it as a challenge. I meant it as a way to expose her bluff. Helen did not even blink in response. She yanked open the back door, grabbed my backpack roughly, and shoved it forcefully into my arms. "Sit there," she said, her finger pointing directly at a bench positioned under a tall light pole. "Think about what you have done. When you are ready to act like a member of this family, we will come back." I stood there, watching her walk away from me, and I kept waiting for that pause, that moment where she would pivot around and admit she was just joking. She did not. She got into the driver's seat with purpose. My brother refused to look up from his game. My sister stared at me with eyes wide open like she was watching some movie she was not supposed to see. I took a step forward. Quote, 15. Helen looked directly at me through the windshield with that eerily calm, completely controlled expression she typically reserved for teachers and neighbors and people she needed to impress. Quote, 16. She mouthed the word silently. Then the vehicle began rolling forward. At first the movement was slow, almost hesitant, like she was offering me one final chance to sprint forward and beg for forgiveness. Then her foot pressed down harder on the gas pedal, and the distance between us opened up like a physical wound. I stood there frozen on the concrete pavement, my hands gripping my backpack strap so tightly my knuckles went white, watching my own family disappear down the exit ramp. The first wave that hit me was pure disbelief. The second wave was burning rage. The third wave was a fear that I refused to name out loud. I pulled out my phone to check. One red battery bar remaining, no charger cable, no cash money. I walked into the public restroom, splashed cold water across my face repeatedly, and stared at my own reflection in the dirty mirror like I could somehow talk myself into feeling older, tougher, safer than I actually was. I approached a woman standing by the sinks and tried asking if she happened to have a phone charger. She glanced at me briefly, then looked away quickly and said she was in a hurry. I walked over to the front desk area, but the clerk informed me that the payphone located outside had not functioned properly in several months. I walked back outside and sat down on that bench exactly where my mom had ordered me to sit, because some part of me still believed that obedience might somehow summon her back. 4 minutes passed. Then 9, then 18 minutes. No car appeared. When my phone screen finally went dark completely, I felt my entire world tilt sideways. I could stay planted here and wait, praying desperately that my mother would remember she had a child, or I could actually move and do something. And the longer I remained sitting on that bench, the more I realized something absolutely sickening. She was not going to come back quickly, because returning quickly would mean admitting she had pushed things too far. So I stood up with determination. I looked at the green highway sign pointing toward the next exit and read the distance out loud like I was forming a concrete plan. 7 miles to reach a truck stop, a gas station, lights, people, civilization. If I could make it that far, I could charge my phone. I could call someone who would actually believe my story. I could stop being a lesson plan and start being a person again. I tightened my shoelaces carefully and started walking with purpose. The first mile was fueled purely by adrenaline coursing through my body. My anger kept my legs pumping forward, and every single time a car passed by, I caught myself imagining it was my mom finally coming back for me. And I hated myself deeply for even hoping. By the time I reached mile 2, the heat started winning the battle. My shirt was sticking uncomfortably to my skin. My throat felt exactly like sandpaper. I kept my eyes focused on the white line painted on the road so I would not look at the highway and picture my body lying dead on it. A horn blared loudly and a massive truck roared past far too close for comfort. I stumbled slightly, caught my balance, and felt my heart slam violently against my ribcage. That was the exact moment I understood how genuinely reckless this entire situation was. Being 18 is old enough to argue back with your parents, but definitely not old enough to be safe walking alone on a highway. I pulled my phone out again, even though it was completely dead, just to hold something in my hands that felt like a lifeline to the outside world. I thought about turning around completely, going back to the rest stop, and asking strangers repeatedly for help until someone finally did something. But then I pictured my mother telling this story later to others. I needed proof of what really happened. I needed my own version of the truth to exist somewhere outside her mouth and her narrative. So I started taking mental pictures of everything. The rest, stop name clearly visible on signs, the time displayed on the big digital sign at the ramp. The exact words she had said to me, quote, 18 by mile 3. My stomach started cramping painfully. I slowed down my pace, forced myself to breathe deeply, and tried desperately not to panic. I made strict rules in my head to stay alive. Keep walking forward. Do not accept help from anyone who makes your skin crawl with bad vibes. If a car stops, stay positioned on the other side of the guardrail. If a man gets out, do not get close to him under any circumstances. I laughed once, just a dry little sound escaping my throat, because my mother would have called this paranoia and overthinking. She would have insisted I was being difficult again, as always. She never understood that I did not feel safe in her world and her version of reality, and now I did not feel safe in the real world either. Around mile 4, my feet started to burn intensely. My sneakers were cheap quality and I could feel blisters forming and rubbing raw. I tried desperately to think of something else, anything else. But my brain kept looping the same question over and over. How could she do that to me? Not just leave me behind, but leave me with the kind of deliberate silence that communicated I somehow deserved this treatment. When I finally hit mile 5, I spotted the truck stop sign in the distance, and the relief hit me so hard it almost made me cry on the spot. I swallowed it down forcefully. Then, just before reaching mile 7, a semi-truck slowed down behind me. My whole body tensed up immediately. The truck stayed positioned a few car lengths back, blinking its hazard lights in a pattern, matching my exact pace like it was studying me carefully. I moved closer to the guardrail and prepared mentally to run if needed. The truck rolled to a complete stop ahead of me, angled so it blocked the shoulder from oncoming traffic. The driver door swung open. A man climbed down slowly, keeping his hands visible at all times, not rushing his movements. Quote 20, he called out, keeping his voice normal and non-threatening. I did not answer him immediately. I backed up a step, ready to bolt at any second. He nodded like he understood my fear completely. He carefully set a sealed water bottle on the ground and stepped back several feet. Only then did I notice the small details that made him feel less threatening overall. A wedding ring on his finger, a company logo clearly visible on his shirt, a dashboard camera inside the cab, practical things that suggested normalcy, not a stranger with nothing to lose. I took the bottle without crossing the distance between us. The plastic felt cold against my fingers. I twisted the cap and drank like my body had been waiting desperately for permission. He asked gently. I said, and my voice cracked with exhaustion. He said, The word police made my stomach flip uncomfortably. I did not want drama or attention. I did not want headlines in newspapers. I did not want my mom turning this into another story about how difficult I was to handle and manage. But I also knew something else deep down. If I did nothing about this, she would do it again in the future. Maybe not to me specifically, but to someone smaller, someone weaker, someone who could not walk 7 miles on a highway shoulder. I pointed at his truck. Quote, Smearn 28. Dennis nodded again like he had expected exactly that question. Quote, 29. He even offered me his driver license to hold while I decided what to do. That was when the fear inside me shifted positions. It did not disappear completely, but it made room for something else entirely. Control. I took my own phone, dead as a rock, and held it up like a camera anyway, pretending I was recording him actively. Dennis did not protest or argue. He simply waited patiently. I said, "Finally." He agreed, firmly. Quote, 33. As I climbed up into the cab, my legs shook noticeably, not from the physical steps, but from the weight of the moment itself. I had walked 7 full miles because my mom wanted to win an argument. Now I was sitting beside a complete stranger because I refused to lose my life over this. Dennis parked carefully under bright lights where other trucks lined up like a small city of vehicles. He did not touch my backpack once. He did not ask intrusive personal questions. He walked me straight to the counter and told the cashier directly, quote, 34, quote. The cashier looked at me, really looked with seeing eyes, like she could see the fear I was desperately trying to hide beneath the surface. She pulled a charging cord from a drawer and pointed to a booth near the window. Quote, 35. My hands shook as I plugged my phone in. The screen lit up with 1% battery like it was waking from a coma. Notifications flooded in all at once in a rush. No missed calls, no frantic texts, nothing at all. That emptiness hit me harder than the entire walk had. My mom had not even tried to check on me once. The lesson had not ended at all. It had barely started. Dennis sat across from me but kept his distance respectfully, giving me space like he knew I needed it desperately. I stared at my phone until it reached 5% battery, and then I opened the dial pad. I did not call my mom. Not yet, anyway. I called the only number I could remember without my contacts list. My best friend. She answered on the second ring, and I did not even say hello first. I said, quote, 36. And then I told her everything in one breath before I could chicken out and change my mind. There was a pause on the other end, and then her voice went sharp with anger. Quote, 37. My chest tightened uncomfortably. Quote, 38. I whispered. Quote, 39. My friend said firmly. Quote, 40. Dennis stood up and walked to the counter. He told the cashier he would stay until an officer arrived on scene. The cashier nodded like this was not her first emergency at midnight. 14 minutes later, 2 patrol cars rolled into the parking lot. A female officer came inside first. She introduced herself professionally, asked my name, asked my age, asked if I was physically hurt. I answered like I was reciting facts about a stranger's life. Then she asked the question that made my throat close up completely. Who left you here? I told her plainly. My mom, Helen Carter. Saying my mom's actual name out loud to a cop felt like the ultimate betrayal. Then I remembered the bench, the brake lights, the silence, and it stopped feeling like betrayal entirely. It started feeling like accountability and justice. The officer stepped outside to make calls on her radio. When she came back inside, her expression was different, tighter, and more serious. Your mother is on the phone right now, she said. She wants to speak to you. My heart hammered in my chest. I took the phone anyway, despite my fear. Emily, my mom said, calm as ever, like nothing was wrong. Where are you? A truck stop, I said. 7 miles from where you left me. There was a breath on the other end. Then her tone turned annoyed, like I had inconvenienced her schedule. You were supposed to sit and wait there. You were supposed to think about your actions. I gripped the phone so hard my fingers hurt. I did think. I thought about how easy it was for you to drive away from me. Do not be dramatic about this, she snapped. You are making this bigger than it is. I was coming back for you. When, exactly? I asked. After dinner, after you cooled off, after you proved your point to me. Silence on the other end. The officer watched my face carefully while I listened, like she could tell exactly when the manipulation was happening. My mom tried again, softer now, performing remorse because there was an audience listening. Honey, just come home now. We can talk privately. You embarrassed me enough already. That last line was a gift because it proved what mattered to her most. I handed the phone back to the officer. I do not feel safe going back with her tonight, I said, and I meant every word. The officer nodded like she had been waiting for exactly that answer. Okay, she said, we are going to do this properly and by the book. She asked if there was another adult I trusted, a relative, a teacher, anyone at all. I thought about the women in my life. Most of them were connected to my mom somehow, loyal to her by default and social obligation. But one name came to mind, someone my mom did not control or influence. Mrs. Collins, my art teacher from school. The officer called her. To my shock, Mrs. Collins answered her phone, and within an hour she was there physically, hair pulled back, eyes fierce like she would fight the entire world for me if she had to. When she hugged me tightly, I finally let myself breathe properly. But as we walked out together, I saw my mom, name written on a form the officer was holding, child endangerment investigation, official report. And I realized something important. My mom lesson had been about power and control. She thought she could take mine away completely. Tonight, the power was changing hands permanently. The next weeks were ugly in a quiet way that seeped into everything. There were phone calls from numbers I did not recognize. There were messages that swung wildly from sweet to furious when I did not answer fast enough for their liking. There were relatives I barely knew, leaving voicemails about forgiveness, as if forgiveness was a bill I owed and had to pay. The police report did not disappear the way my mom problems usually did. A social worker interviewed me at school. Another interviewed my siblings separately. My mom had to explain on official record why she thought abandoning a minor on a highway was parenting. She tried to rewrite it all. She said I ran out on my own. She said I threatened to hurt myself. She said she was afraid of me. She said she only drove around the block once. The officer had already checked the cameras at the rest stop. The truth was not flexible or negotiable. Still, my mom did not apologize, not once, not ever. She blamed me for making her look bad to others. She blamed the officer for overreacting to the situation. She blamed Mrs. Collins for taking my side against her. She blamed everyone except the woman in the driver's seat. My dad finally called and his voice sounded tired and worn down, like he had been losing battles in that house for years. He asked me to come home so things could go back to normal. I thought to myself. I told him I was not coming back ever. Mrs. Collins helped me file paperwork for temporary guardianship until I turned 19. She helped me find a part-time job. She helped me apply for scholarships. She did not ask me to forgive anyone. She asked me what I wanted for my own life. The answer shocked me when I realized it. I wanted my mother to understand that I was not hers to break into pieces. So I made a decision that felt like swallowing glass shards. I cut them off completely. I changed my number. I stopped checking the mailbox. I blocked social media accounts one by one systematically. The day I turned 19, I signed my own lease on a tiny studio and slept on the floor because I could not afford a bed yet. I was exhausted and terrified and happier than I had ever been in my entire life. Years passed by. College classes, late shifts at work, friends who became family, therapy sessions that taught me a word my mother hated. Boundaries. Every once in a while I would hear a rumor through a friend of a friend passing through networks. My mom telling people I was ungrateful. My mom telling people I was unstable mentally. My mom telling people she did everything she could possibly do. I did not correct her stories. I let the silence do what it always did best. It protected her reputation. And then, yesterday, after all that distance and time, a thick envelope appeared in my mailbox with handwriting I knew like a scar on my body. A baby shower invite. Their names printed neatly on the return address, like nothing had ever happened. Like they had the right to reach into my life whenever it suited them. I tore it up into pieces. I swept it into the trash can. But later that night, I could not sleep at all because one torn invitation had brought the highway back under my feet, and I realized I was done being a lesson for anyone. I was ready to be the one teaching it instead. Yesterday should have ended when I tore that invitation up and dumped it in the trash, but the paper did not stay dead and buried. It followed me through the night like the hum of tires on a highway that never stops. In the morning, I fished the pieces out, smoothed them flat on my kitchen table, and stared until my eyes stung. Baby shower, Saturday, 3 p.m. in the afternoon, an address I had not seen in years, their names on the return label, printed like they still had the right to put a stamp on my life. My first instinct was simple and clean. Ignore it completely. Let them wonder where I am. Let the silence do to them what it used to do to me. Then I pictured a room full of women laughing, passing tiny socks around, taking photos under pastel balloons, and my mother in the center of it all, glowing with her favorite thing in the entire world, an audience to perform for. I could already hear her voice, sweet and polished like honey, telling some version of our history that made her look brave and me look broken, beyond repair. Quote 61. I sat there, fingers hovering over my phone, and I realized what that invitation really was at its core. It was not a peace offering. It was a test. Would I stay quiet and let her rewrite me again, or would I finally take control of the story she stole from me? I called Mrs. Collins first. We had not spoken much in the last few years, but she picked up like no time had passed at all. I told her about the invite, about the return address, about the way my stomach had flipped the second I saw that handwriting. She listened, then said one sentence that steadied me completely. Quote 62. Next, I called my best friend, the same one who had answered that night at the truck stop. She laughed when I told her I was thinking about going, not because it was funny, but because she understood what it meant. Quote 63, she said. Quote 64. That was the moment I stopped thinking like the 18-year-old on the shoulder and started thinking like the woman who had built a life from nothing. I was not going to show up to scream. I was not going to throw a cake, flip a table, or do anything that would let my mother point and say, quote 65. My revenge was going to be clean, clear, impossible to twist into her narrative. I pulled up the old case number from an email Mrs. Collins had forwarded years ago. I requested the report again. I printed the pages that mattered most. Date, location, minor abandoned, statement taken. I dug out a photo from my cloud storage that I had not opened in forever. A blurry shot of a truck door with a company logo taken at the truck stop when my phone finally came back to life. I had taken it without thinking, just proof that I was not imagining that night. Under the photo was a timestamp. Then I did something I had avoided for years. I searched their address online, the same house, same street, same perfect lawn that used to make neighbors say Losie, quote 66. I stared at the map until the old anger started to rise. Then I forced it down. Not anger anymore, just focus. I wrote a letter, not to mail, but to read out loud, 1 page only. No poetry, no begging, just facts and consequences. I practiced out loud until my voice stopped shaking. I rehearsed the moment she would try to cut me off. And I rehearsed what I would say back. Quote 67. I also planned an exit because revenge is pointless if you let it trap you again. I would go in. I would say what I came to say. And I would leave while I still had the power. Friday night I barely slept. I kept thinking about the question I never answered at 17. Saturday morning, I got dressed like I was going to a job interview, not a baby shower. Simple, calm. I put the printed report and my letter into a plain folder. I did not wear anything that would make me look dramatic because I knew my mother would be watching for any excuse. Before I left, I stood in front of my door with my keys in my hand and asked myself one last time if I was doing this for them. When I pulled up to the house, cars lined both sides of the street. I could hear music through the open windows, laughter, the same laughter I used to fake. I sat in my car for a full minute, breathing, feeling my heartbeat thump against the seatbelt. Then I picked up the folder, stepped out, and walked toward the front door like I belonged there, because the truth belonged there. The moment I rang the bell, I almost turned around, not because I was scared of my mother, but because I was suddenly aware of how easy it would be to keep living without this. I had survived without closure. I had built strength without apologies. But then the door opened and I saw a face I had not seen in years. My sister Michelle stood there, visibly pregnant, cheeks flushed with excitement, one hand holding a ribbon. Her smile started, then froze, like her brain could not decide if I was real. She whispered. Hearing my name in her voice cracked something inside me. I had not come for my mother. I had come for this, for the next generation, for the chance that the family pattern would stop here. Behind her, the living room was crowded with women holding gift bags and paper plates. Someone squealed, thinking I was another guest. Then my mother appeared, gliding forward with a hostess smile so practiced it could have been stitched to her face. Helen stopped when she saw me. For a second her expression slipped, just a flash of shock. Then it snapped back into place. She said softly, like she was performing concern. Quote, 72. Michelle turned to her. Quote, 73. Her tone carried confusion and something sharper underneath, like she had just realized the invitation was not as innocent as she thought. My mother looked at Michelle, then back at me, and I could see the calculation in her eyes. She was deciding how to control this. She reached for my arm like we were close. I stepped back before her fingers touched me. Quote, 74. I said loud enough for the nearest group to hear. Quote, 75. The room went quiet in that fast, unnatural way, like someone turned down the volume on everyone at once. My mom's smile tightened. This is not the time, she murmured, her voice still gentle. Please do not do this. I looked around the room, faces turned toward me, curious, wary, hungry for context. I felt the old urge to shrink, to apologize for existing. It passed like a wave, and then it was gone. This is exactly the time, I said, because this is a room full of women celebrating motherhood, and I need you to hear what kind of mother you were to me. My dad was there too, standing near the kitchen doorway, older than I remembered, eyes tired in the same way they had sounded on the phone years ago. He took a step forward like he wanted to stop me, then stopped himself. He knew. He had always known. Michelle swallowed hard. Emily, what is she talking about? I opened the folder, pulled out the police report, and held it like a mirror. My voice stayed steady because I had practiced, but I could still feel the tremor under my ribs. When I was 18, I was left at a highway rest stop. Not lost, not wandering, left. It was meant to teach me a lesson. I walked 7 miles on the shoulder before a trucker helped me get somewhere safe. The police filed a report. This is it. A woman near the couch gasped. Another whispered, "Oh my God." My mom faced pale, then flushed. She tried to laugh, a tiny dismissive sound. "That is not what happened. You are twisting it." I did not move my eyes off her. "You can deny it," I said, "but you cannot rewrite a document you did not control. You cannot rewrite the cameras at the rest stop. You cannot rewrite the officer who called you that night." My mother stepped closer, voice dropping into that familiar warning tone. "Emily, stop. You are embarrassing yourself." There it was, the same line, the same weapon. I almost smiled because she had not changed at all, and that made my next words easier. "No," I said. "I am embarrassing you, and that is the difference." Michelle stared at the paper, then at my mom. "You told me she ran away," Michelle said, voice rising. "You told me she was dramatic and ungrateful." My mother swung toward her. "Michelle, honey, you do not understand." Michelle took a step back like the truth had heat. "Do not honey me," she snapped. "Did you leave her?" My mom's mouth opened, then closed. My dad finally spoke, voice rough. "Helen, answer her." The room felt like it was holding its breath. My mother looked around, searching for allies, but she had built her power on being believed, and belief dies fast when facts show up. Her voice shook the first time all afternoon. I was trying to teach her respect. She said she was out of control. She was always fighting me. I thought she would stay there. I thought she would wait. I was coming back. I tilted my head. When? I asked. After dinner, after you proved your point, after you enjoyed the silence. My mom's eyes flashed with anger. You were fine, she said. Nothing happened to you. I turned slightly so everyone could hear the next part. Something did happen. I learned that your love had conditions. I learned that you would risk my safety to win an argument. I learned that no one in this house would protect me if it meant challenging you. And I learned that if I wanted to live, I had to leave you. My dad flinched like the words hit him too. Michelle covered her mouth, tears filling her eyes. I hated that I was hurting her, but I also knew she deserved the truth before she brought a child into the same storm. I pulled out the letter I had written, but I did not read the whole thing. I did not need to. I had the room. I had the moment. I had what 18-year-old me never had. A voice people had to listen to. I have not heard from you in years, I said to my mother. Not because you could not find me, but because reaching out would mean admitting what you did. Then you sent a baby shower invitation with your names on it, like we are a normal family. Like you did not abandon your daughter on a highway. So here is what I want, and it is simple. I stepped closer. Just enough. I want you to say the truth out loud to everyone, and I want you to apologize. Not privately, not later, right now, because if you are about to celebrate becoming a grandmother, then you need to face what you did as a mother. My mother stared at me like she wanted to slap the words out of my mouth, but she could not here, not with witnesses, not with Michelle watching her like she was seeing a stranger. For a long second she said nothing. Then very quietly she whispered, I am sorry. I shook my head once. Not to me, I said. To the room, to your daughter, to the truth. Her jaw tightened. Her eyes darted toward the guests, the decorations, the camera phones that had started to rise in shaky hands. Finally she spoke louder, voice brittle. I left Emily at a rest stop when she was 18. I should not have done that. I was wrong. A murmur rippled through the room, half shock, half judgment. I could almost feel her reputation cracking, and I realized this was the price she had avoided for years. Not jail, not a fine, something she cared about more, being seen. Michelle wiped her face, then looked at me. Why did you not tell me? She asked. I swallowed. Because I thought telling the truth would make me the villain in her story, I said, and I was tired of fighting for a place in a family that only loved me when I was quiet. Michelle nodded slowly like something inside her clicked into alignment. She turned to our mother. You are not hosting this anymore, Michelle said. Her voice was calm, but it landed like a hammer. This is my baby shower, and I will not start my motherhood with lies. My mother stiffened. Michelle lifted her chin. Go to the kitchen or go upstairs or go anywhere that is not the center of this room right now. My dad did not stop her. He just stood there, shoulders slumped, looking like a man who finally understood the cost of his silence. My mother looked around one last time, searching for control. Then she walked away with rigid steps, passing the gift table like it was a stranger. People watched her go. No one stopped her. That was the real revenge, not my words. Not the way the room decided she could not hide anymore. I could have stayed. I could have basked in the moment. I could have demanded more. But revenge is not about dragging the past forever. It is about cutting the cord. I closed the folder, held it against my chest, and looked at Michelle. I did not come to take your day, I said. I came to make sure you did not raise a child in a house where abandonment gets called a lesson. Michelle stepped forward and hugged me carefully because of her belly, but tightly enough that I felt her shaking. Stay, she whispered. Please, at least for a little while. I shook my head gently. Not today, I said. Today I needed to do one thing and I did it. But I will meet you tomorrow. Just us if you want. Michelle nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. I want that. As I walked out, my dad followed me to the porch. Emily, he said, I am sorry. I looked at him, and for once I did not soften to make him comfortable. Sorry does not rewind a highway, I said. It does not undo 7 miles, but it can change what happens next. Do better for Michelle. Do better for that baby." He nodded, eyes wet. "I will try." I got into my car and drove, not home at first, but to the edge of town where the highway signs began. I did not plan it. My hands just turned the wheel like they remembered. When I reached the rest stop, it was smaller than my memory. Almost families came and went. Kids ran to the vending machines. A woman laughed as she adjusted a toddler's jacket. I walked to the bench under the light pole, the same spot, or close enough. I sat down and let the air fill my lungs. 18-year-old me had sat here waiting for love that never came. Today I sat here knowing I did not need it. I stood up, brushed off my jeans, and walked back to my car without looking over my shoulder. If you were me, would you forgive someone who abandoned you?